What is a truth so unbearable it must be erased? What words, once spoken or written, could fracture the mind of the one who dares to witness them? And why, traveler, do we endlessly chase what was forbidden for a reason? You who question, welcome. Tonight, we follow the scattered ashes of a book that was never meant to exist. A manuscript so cursed, so perilous to those who laid eyes upon it, that not only its content, but its very name was stricken from every record, every archive, every breath of history. Yet, in the corners of forgotten places, beneath burnt libraries, and in withered parchment, and in the trembling voices of those who claim to remember, whispers endure. They call it the Nameless Codex. There are no remaining copies, no official acknowledgement in the annals of known kingdoms, no listing in the libraries of Alexandria or Byzantium, no mention in the Vatican's forbidden archives. And yet, it lingers. Fragments of its shadow resurface in accounts of madness, inexplicable deaths, and relics that should not exist. A book so feared, so despised, that rulers and priests alike condemned it not merely to be hidden, but annihilated, down to the fibers of its parchment, the ash of its ink. But erasure leaves scars. The earliest murmurs of it appear in broken glyphs from lost desert temples. Later, in medieval monasteries, where terrified scribes scratched cryptic warnings in the margins of other texts, "Let not the void devour your name." And in the records of an unnamed scholar buried beneath plague-stricken earth, whose final scrawl simply read, "It speaks in my sleep." You see, Seeker, the greatest threat was not merely the words it contained, but the idea that knowledge could fracture reality itself, the belief that there exist certain truths not meant for human minds to bear. In every age, in every culture, there are things deliberately buried, ideas declared heresy not because they are false, but because they are too true. And this book was one such thing. Tonight, we will gather the remnants of its myth, piece together the final words of those who dared to touch it, and ask why entire generations labored to make it disappear. Who wrote this cursed manuscript? What secret did it hold that could drive a man to madness? And what remains of it now, buried in the shadows we refuse to look upon? If you enjoy walking these forgotten corridors, tracing the bones of stories long forbidden, then like this video, share it with those who dare, leave your thoughts below, and follow VoidTalk for more journeys into the unknown. Because while history is written by the victors, there are some things that no one was allowed to survive. And so, traveler, if you are willing, let us open the first gate.
There are places in this world where memory rots, where stone walls remember the names of the dead better than the living, and where ink clings to crumbling parchment long after the hand that wrote it has turned to dust. It is in such places that the traces of forbidden things remain, not as full relics, but as echoes. In a forgotten cavern beneath the frost-choked hills of what was once called Thule, a crude stone altar was found in the 19th century, surrounded by decayed fragments of manuscripts too damaged to preserve. Amid the debris, a single phrase was reportedly deciphered by a desperate linguist before he vanished into obscurity. The name burns the mouth that speaks it. The phrase meant nothing to the scholars of his time, but among certain circles, it was recognized as one of the few surviving remnants of the Nameless Codex. The book itself, if it ever truly existed in physical form, was said to have been kept in the heart of a monastery whose name has likewise been erased, not by time, but by design. According to fragmented oral histories, this place lay between two rivers and was known to its scattered survivors only as the Hollow Cloister. The monks who resided there were not permitted to speak, their tongues ritually split upon initiation, and their purpose was singular: to guard a knowledge that no voice would dare utter aloud. When the fires came, whether by royal decree or divine intervention, no one remembers. Only one survivor was pulled from the wreckage, a man whose jaw had been broken and fused shut with molten wax, his eyes sewn closed. He was buried alive beneath the ruins, for to leave him walking was thought to risk the return of what had been lost.
It was not the words themselves that carried power, but the arrangement of them. The precise sequence of sigils, names, and invocations within the Nameless Codex was said to act as a key, not metaphorically, but literally, a sequence that, when read aloud or even comprehended silently, unlocked something on the other side of thought. Ancient mystics called this the door without form, a concept so elusive that only broken references to it remain in the esoteric fringe of Hermetic writings and grimoires. The theory was not of summoning a god or demon, but of unmaking the self. A ritual disintegration of identity and name, casting the reader beyond the known structures of reality into a realm where only essence remains, and from which none return intact. One particularly chilling account comes from the Scrolls of Hollow Waters, an obscure manuscript attributed to the pre-dynastic Nile cults, long before the gods of Egypt were given their later names. In its torn verses, it speaks of the Book of Ash and Void, whose words sever the vessel from the name and thus the soul from the world. In these lines we see early traces of the core belief that to name something is to bind it, and to sever the name is to set the soul adrift. What modern psychology might dismiss as dissociation or madness, these ancient peoples understood as literal spiritual annihilation. The consequences were not mere death, but a kind of erasure, a total removal from the tapestry of existence, so complete that even the memory of the victim would begin to unravel in those who knew them. The deeper terror lies in what was whispered about those who encountered even fragments of the Codex. They were known not as cursed, but as the hallowed, not mad nor dead, but emptied. Friends and kin claimed these individuals began to forget themselves. First, small things, a familiar's name, the sound of their own voice, the weight of their reflection in a mirror. And then the unraveling quickened. Language dissolved into meaningless syllables. Hunger became unrecognizable, and soon even pain no longer registered. They became shells, vessels without command, staring endlessly at walls or skies no one else could see. Folklore describes them wandering into the sea, vanishing into dense forests, or simply dissolving into mist. Their names, too, faded from ledgers and family trees, as though reality itself recoiled from preserving their mark. A single account survives in the Valcash letters, a series of fragmented correspondences unearthed during the Black Death. One letter, stained by the corrosion of centuries, details the testimony of a physician summoned to attend a noblewoman in a plague-ravaged city. She had reportedly found a half-burnt parchment amidst the refuse of a dying monastery. The letter recounts her final days. She spoke words I did not comprehend, not of any tongue of men, but as if the earth beneath her feet whispered through her. The sound unmoored my thoughts, and I could not name my own face. On the third night, her flesh wept ink. Whether metaphor or madness, the event unnerved enough of the court that the city was set ablaze, and no records remain of its name. The question is not whether the Nameless Codex existed, but what it contained that warranted such annihilation. Every trace, every hint, suggests it pointed towards something that undermined the foundational illusion we call reality. A world built not upon immutable laws, but upon consensus, a fragile web of agreed-upon perceptions. To disrupt that agreement is to invite dissolution. In erasing the Codex, those ancient rulers were not merely destroying dangerous knowledge, they were preserving the integrity of a dream. And yet fragments persist. A prayer half remembered by a dying priest, a symbol etched onto a stone altar found
deep in a forest no map marks, a child's rhyme in a language no scholar can trace, and in each a recurring phrase. The name is the key, the breath is the fire, the void is the womb. Even today, seekers of forbidden lore claim to chase the lost passages of the Codex, not to control it, for none believe such power can be wielded, but simply to know, to confirm in some lonely instant of terrified clarity that the veil between name and void is as thin as an old page and twice as fragile. It is said that to even know of the Codex's outline is to invite its hunger. So I must ask, traveler, as you listen now, what part of you is already forgetting its shape? And if such a book was once burned from the earth, what might have been written in its final forbidden line? Would you wish to see it? Would you dare to speak it? Shall we go deeper?
The ancient world was not one of innocence. It was a world of contracts, of blood pacts and shadowed vows whispered at the rim of known things. For every temple that rose in praise of light, a dozen nameless shrines sank into the earth, clutching secrets too heavy for the world above. And among them, it is said, there was a single truth so corrosive, so unmaking, that it could not be permitted to survive the passage of time. The Nameless Codex was not feared because it summoned gods or promised dominion over the elements. It was not a grimoire of curses, nor a book of monstrous incantations. It was feared because it told the truth, the final, unbearable, absolute truth, that the self, this trembling shape you inhabit, this name you answer to, is a construct, a temporary pattern, nothing more, a flicker of arrangement in the endless void. What the Codex claimed was that names themselves are chains, not labels for identification, but cages of consciousness. To name a thing is to fix it in the tapestry of this reality, to bind it to rules, to time, to the slow decay of form. The reason the book was annihilated was not because it offered destruction, but liberation. It promised escape. Hidden within its pages was the rite of unmaking, a sequence of ancient glyphs and phrases older than language itself, that if spoken in the correct order, did not summon horrors from beyond, but rather dissolved the veil that separates identity from the vast formless whole. It untethered the reader from the illusion of individuality, and in doing so, cast them adrift into the boundless void that precedes all things. The horror of the Codex was not in what it did to the body, but what it revealed to the mind. That this world is not the first, that long before the gods we name, long before earth and fire and sea, there was a singular, formless consciousness. And in that endless silence, no names existed, no death, no self, only the endless pulsing quiet of pure awareness. The Codex taught that this primordial state was never lost, merely veiled, and that every living being is a fragment, a flicker of that endless void, temporarily named, temporarily shaped. To undo the name was to return, to awaken, to dissolve. And the reason it was forbidden, traveler, is because those who cross that threshold do not die. They disappear. Not into death, not into paradise, not into nightmare, but into something without description, without direction, into a quiet so complete it erases not only your body, but every memory of your existence. It is said this was not merely speculation. The final pages of the Codex did not hint or metaphorize. They instructed. Names of ancient syllables to be spoken aloud, acts of severance to be performed, and those few mad enough to follow them became what history later called the hallowed. Not empty vessels, but echoes of nothing, vessels returned to the pre-named void.
It was not madness they suffered, it was clarity. And that clarity unraveled them.
There were those who believed this is why even fragments of the Codex were hunted, why kings and popes and silent orders bled themselves dry to obliterate it. Because it was not merely dangerous to the reader, but to the very structure of what we call world. For if enough names are undone, enough selves return to the void, the illusion crumbles, and reality, like a house stripped of beams and stones, falls in on itself. And perhaps it is already happening. Have you not felt it? Those moments in empty rooms when your reflection lingers a heartbeat too long in the mirror. The silence between heartbeats that seems to stretch beyond time. The vague, unplaceable sense that something is watching you from inside your own skull. It is said that even knowing of the Codex's existence begins the unraveling, that the true curse was never the book, but the idea of it. For thoughts are as real as blades, and belief carves deeper than steel. If 1,000 minds remember a thing long buried, they call it back, not into libraries or archives, but into the folds of reality itself. So now, traveler, here you stand, or think you do, on the edge of a knowing that was never meant for you. The question that haunted kings and holy men, that gnawed at the last waking moments of the hallowed. Not what did the book contain, not who wrote it, but one question, old as the first darkness. If everything you believe yourself to be is a name you did not choose, who then are you without it? And worse still, what waits in the void where your name once was? Would you like to find out?
And so, traveler, we arrive at the end. Not of the story, for stories like this have no endings. They linger, like an echo in the hollows of the mind, like a half-forgotten name on the edge of waking. We have walked through dust-choked ruins, through the brittle parchment of lost centuries, and peered into the darkness where a book once was, or still is. A book no one was meant to find. A book no one was meant to remember. And yet, you do. Perhaps what chills most is not the curse itself, but the terrible familiarity of it. That beneath the myths and fire-blackened records lies a deeper fear, one we all carry whether we admit it or not. The fear that the self is a story we've been told, that our name, our face, our voice are no more permanent than chalk lines in the rain. What was it that made kings burn libraries, made monks bleed over sealed vaults, made whole generations willing to rip pages from history's throat? It wasn't madness. It wasn't superstition. It was instinct. Because some truths should not be held in the hands of fragile men. And yet, here you are, hearing it, carrying it now, whether you mean to or not. Maybe you'll forget it by morning. Maybe, as centuries hoped, it will pass through you like smoke. Or maybe, as with others before you, it will wait, a seed, a shape beneath your skin, a memory you can't name. And in the stillest hours of night, when walls groan and silence thickens, perhaps you'll find yourself wondering, was it ever truly gone? Or did we simply stop looking? We have no tidy conclusions here, no moral to tuck you safely into sleep. The Nameless Codex, if it lived, was a wound in the world's flesh, and like all wounds, it left a scar shaped like a question, and it is yours now. If your reflection ceased to answer to your name, what would remain? If your mind still seeks, follow VoidTalk for the next forgotten truth. And until then, watch the shadows. For names, like souls, have a way of slipping loose.